The thing inside that containment cell hated the sound of keys. Not gunshots, not barking dogs, not the humming fluorescent lights above the booking hall. Keys. Every time the ring on my belt rattled against the steel door frame, it would stop pacing and lift its head slow. Real slow. Like a wolf hearing a rabbit breathe under snow. That was the first thing that truly frightened me about it. Not the size, not the teeth, not the smell that rolled out of the cell like wet copper and rotten pine needles. It was the recognition in those yellow eyes, the understanding. It knew what keys meant. I can still hear the scratching, 3 nights, 72 hours. That was how long we kept it locked inside the old county containment block beneath the sheriff's station outside Black Hollow Ridge. February of 1998. The temperature dropped to 11 below on the second night. Ice climbed the bars inside the drainage tunnel beneath the floor. People online now call those things DOGMAN, half wolf, half man, forest spirits, military experiments. I do not know what they are, I only know what I saw under those lights, and I know Deputy Ellis Mercer died screaming 15 feet from me, while that creature looked directly into my eyes like it understood every word I shouted. I have kept this quiet for 28 years because nobody would believe it. Hell, I barely believe it myself some mornings. But I am old now. My lungs are giving out. The doctors say the asbestos from the old mill probably finished the job the cigarettes started. So, before I die, I want somebody to know what happened in that station. Not because I need forgiveness, not because I expect understanding, but because something spoke to me from inside that cell on the 3rd night, and I have spent nearly 3 decades trying to convince myself I imagined it. The snow outside the station that week came sideways. Hard northern wind tearing through the pines. You could hear branches cracking all night long like rifle fire in the mountains. We only had 4 deputies on winter rotation back then because Black Hollow Ridge was barely a town anymore. Coal dried up. Families moved away. Storefronts emptied one window at a time. The station smelled like burnt coffee and damp uniforms, same as always. I had been sheriff for 9 years by then. Before that, I served in military police during Desert Storm. Before that, I ruined a marriage by choosing work over home every single time it mattered. Funny thing about loneliness. It does not arrive all at once. It leaks in through tiny cracks until one day you wake up talking to the radio because the silence feels too heavy. That winter, the silence out near Mercer Creek felt wrong. We started getting livestock calls in late January. Goats torn apart. Not eaten clean, torn, like something enjoyed the damage more than the feeding. Then came the dogs. 3 disappeared from the north properties beyond mile marker 12. A 4th came back alive. Barely. I saw that shepherd mix myself on the Morgan property. Snow packed into its fur. One eye gone. Chest split open like somebody tried peeling the hide away while it still breathed. But the strange part was the tracks around the barn. Not wolf tracks, too long, too narrow, and every few feet the thing switched from 4 legs to 2. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A wounded bear, maybe, some sick drifter wearing snowshoes. Looking back now, that was my first real mistake. Rationalizing. I did it constantly with that thing. Every warning sign got folded into some explanation my brain could survive. That Friday night, the storm finally buried the highway. Power flickered twice around 8:15. Ellis was downstairs processing a drunk from the tavern, while I sat behind the front desk listening to the weather radio hiss static between warnings. Then the station dogs started losing their minds. Now, those shepherds had seen everything. Meth cooks, shootings, a mountain lion once. They never barked like that. This was panic, high-pitched, desperate. I remember standing so fast my chair tipped backward onto the tile floor. Coffee splashed across paperwork. Ellis yelled up from downstairs asking what the hell was happening. Then came the sound outside. Not a howl. People describe it wrong online. They always say howl because that is easier to imagine. This was deeper. Wet somehow, like something forcing air through a damaged throat. The dogs tucked their tails instantly. Silence after that, heavy silence, the kind that presses against your ears. I stepped outside with my flashlight and service rifle. Snow hit sideways so hard it stung my face. Visibility maybe 30 feet. Then I saw the blood, a line of it crossing the parking lot toward the drainage woods behind the station. Fresh. Steam still rising. I followed it farther than I should have. Another mistake. The flashlight caught movement near the tree line first. Low shape, huge shoulders. Gray fur soaked black from blood. One arm hanging useless at its side. Arm, not leg. It stood before my brain, caught up to what I was seeing. Tall as a station doorway, maybe 7 feet, maybe more. Hard to judge through the storm. Its muzzle looked wrong for a wolf. Too expressive. Eyes forward, facing like ours. And wrapped around its wrist was a rusted steel trap dragging through the snow behind it. The creature staggered once, then collapsed. I should have shot it right there. Every instinct screamed at me to shoot, but it looked exhausted, hurt, dying maybe. And God help me for this next part because it still shames me to admit it. When that thing lifted its head toward me in the snow, I saw fear in its eyes. Real fear. Not animal panic, not rage. Fear. The same look I had seen in wounded soldiers overseas. The same look my ex-wife wore the night she packed her suitcase and realized I still cared more about the badge than her. That thing was terrified. Ellis reached me a minute later with Deputy Collins behind him. Both nearly opened fire immediately, but I stopped them. I told myself we needed answers. I told myself if the state found out we had captured some unknown predator alive, Black Hollow Ridge would finally matter again. Funding, maybe. Attention, purpose. Truth is simpler. I did not want to kill it. The trap chain had wrapped around a pine root. That was the only reason it stayed down. Even injured, it looked powerful enough to rip a man apart. Its chest rose unevenly beneath thick winter fur. Blood bubbled from one side every breath. Collins whispered, "Sheriff." What the hell is that? I remember answering without thinking. Cold. That is what I said. Because it was shivering. We used the animal control catch pole from the garage and 3 transport chains from evidence lockup. Took 40 minutes. Nobody spoke much. Every time we got close, the creature bared its teeth but never lunged. Never once. It watched us constantly, though, especially me. That bothered me more than anything. The containment block downstairs had been built in the 50s. Concrete walls reinforced with old riot bars from the prison county north of us. We used it mostly for violent drunks during snowstorms. That night, we locked something impossible behind those bars. And when the final door slammed shut, the creature dragged itself slowly into the corner beneath the drain pipe. Exhausted, bleeding. Then it covered its face with both hands. Hands, 5 fingers. Black claws. Scar across the left palm. I remember Ellis muttering a prayer beside me. The station smelled different after that. Musky, wild, like wet fur drying beside a campfire. Nobody wanted to leave the downstairs corridor alone. Even Collins stopped joking around, especially after the creature noticed the silver harmonica hanging from my jacket pocket. Now that harmonica matters. You need to understand that. I carried it every day after my son died. He was 8 years old when leukemia took him. Loved old blues music, could barely play 2 songs on the thing, but he carried it everywhere. After the funeral, I kept it in my pocket because the weight reminded me I had once been somebody besides a sheriff. That first night in containment, the creature heard the harmonica clink against my zipper, and it tilted its head. Slowly, like recognition. I should have walked away then. I should have ended it before any of the rest happened. But lonely men make dangerous decisions when they think something broken might understand them. The storm buried the town by morning. Snow pressed halfway up the station windows, and the radio tower behind the courthouse iced over so badly the signal cut in and out every few minutes. The world beyond Black Hollow Ridge felt very far away that Saturday morning. Quiet, too. Not peaceful quiet. Contained quiet. Like the entire valley was holding its breath. I barely slept an hour. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those yellow eyes staring through the bars downstairs. Watching. Thinking. Around 5:30 in the morning, I finally gave up trying to sleep and walked into the station kitchen. Coffee tasted burnt. Old radiator pipes knocked inside the walls. Ellis sat at the table, rubbing his hands around a mug, while Colin stared silently through the frosted window toward the woods behind the station. Nobody wanted to say it out loud. We had something impossible locked downstairs. Ellis finally broke the silence first. "You think it's military?" I remember laughing once at that. Dry, tired. Military doesn't leave tracks barefoot in the snow. Collins looked sick. Younger than usual somehow. He had only been with the department 2 years and still carried himself like the job might turn into the television version someday. Action, respect, hero stories. That illusion had started dying in him the moment we dragged the creature downstairs. He looked at me carefully before speaking. "You looked into its face longer than any of us did. Did it look human to you?" That question stayed with me for years because I lied when I answered it. No. Truth was more complicated. The mouth was wrong for a person. Too long. Teeth too large. Fur thick around the throat and shoulders. But the eyes were human enough to unsettle something deep in your bones. Not because they looked exactly human, because they looked close enough. That is worse. A wolf looks like a wolf. Your brain accepts it immediately. But when something exists halfway between categories, the mind rebels against it. You feel it physically, like vertigo. At 6:12, we heard the first bang from downstairs. Not violent, rhythmic. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks again. Ellis slowly lowered his coffee mug. Nobody moved at first. Then came another set. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. The sound echoed through the old pipes and concrete floor beneath us. Deliberate. Controlled. I remember Collins whispering, "Jesus Christ." We grabbed rifles before going downstairs, though I doubt they would have mattered much if that thing decided to attack us. The containment corridor felt colder than before. Breath fogged instantly under the flickering lights. The creature sat upright in the corner when we approached the bars. Still chained at wrists and ankles, still watching. One eye swollen, nearly shut now. Blood crusted dark along the ribs where the trap had torn through flesh. But it was awake. Alert. And beside the bars lay the source of the knocking, the metal food tray. It had been striking the tray carefully against the floor, 3 times. Pause. 3 times. Not random movement, not animal frustration. Pattern. I should have known then we were dealing with something far beyond instinct. The creature stopped tapping when it saw me approach. Slowly, its gaze dropped toward my jacket pocket where the harmonica rested beneath the fabric. Then it made a sound. Soft, almost like a cough. "Oh," I stepped closer before my brain could argue with me. "Sheriff," Ellis warned quietly. I ignored him. The smell near the bars hit hardest up close. Wet fur, blood, pine sap. Underneath all of it came another smell, too. Smoke. Old wood smoke buried deep into its coat like it had spent years near fires. The creature raised one clawed hand slowly, not aggressive, pointing toward my pocket. I felt every hair on my arms stand up. "You want this?" I asked before thinking. God help me, I actually asked it that. Collins muttered something under his breath about me losing my damn mind. The creature made that low coughing sound again. Then it tilted its head exactly the same way my son used to whenever he listened to music. That nearly broke me right there. Grief does strange things to lonely men. It creates openings where good judgment used to live. I took the harmonica from my pocket slowly. The old silver edges were scratched dull from years riding beside my badge. Ellis stared at me like I had gone insane. "What are you doing?" "I don't know yet." The creature's eyes stayed fixed on the harmonica the entire time. Not the movement, not my hands, the instrument itself. I crouched beside the bars carefully and held it up. The creature leaned forward. Slowly. Those chains rattled soft against the concrete floor. No growling, no lunging, curiosity. That terrified me more than violence would have. I played 3 notes before I could stop myself. Just 3. Thin, shaky sounds filled the corridor. Old blues tune my son used to butcher in the living room while his mother pretended not to laugh. The creature froze completely, still as carved stone. Then something happened. I have never told another living soul because it sounds impossible even to me. The thing closed its eyes. Not because the sound hurt it, because it was listening. I saw recognition move across its face. Memory, maybe. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The station seemed impossibly quiet around us. Even the storm outside faded beneath the low, trembling harmonica notes. Then the creature opened its eyes suddenly and looked past us toward the rear hallway. Instantly alert. Every muscle tightened. That was when we heard it too. Another howl outside. Farther into the woods behind the station. Answering. The creature stood so violently the chains snapped taut against the floorbolts. Collins raised his rifle immediately. Ellis stumbled backward, swearing. The howl came again, longer this time, and from somewhere deeper in the forest another howl answered it. Not one creature. More. I remember the exact feeling in my stomach when I realized that. Cold certainty. The thing inside our containment block had not been wandering alone through those mountains. The creature in the cell began pacing after that. Fast. Agitated. It kept glancing toward the drainage window near the ceiling where snow blew through cracked wire mesh. Every few minutes it sniffed the air sharply. Listening. Waiting. I told myself they were wolves outside. Coyotes, maybe. My brain still clung desperately to rational explanations. Looking back now, that denial feels almost pathetic. By noon, the county phones started ringing. Reports from North properties. Livestock screaming during the night. Something circling barns. Huge tracks near the river. One caller swore he saw a man covered in hair standing beside the road before dawn. We told everybody to stay indoors until the storm passed. We never mentioned the thing downstairs. Around 2 in the afternoon, the power failed completely. The backup generator kicked on after 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds mattered. I still think about them sometimes. The silence during that blackout felt wrong. Heavy, alive somehow. When the emergency lights flickered on downstairs, the creature was no longer pacing. It stood directly beside the bars, staring into the dark corridor. Waiting. Then came a noise from somewhere beneath us. Scraping. metal against concrete. The old drainage tunnel under containment connected to runoff pipes leading into the forest hillside behind the station. Most of it had collapsed decades earlier. Rats nested down there sometimes during winter. At least that is what I told myself when we first heard movement under the floor. Scraping again. Closer. The creature lowered its head immediately and released a deep warning growl that vibrated through the bars into my chest. Not fear. Warning. Toward us. Ellis looked pale beneath the emergency lights. Something's down there. Before I could answer, the scraping stopped. Silence again. Then one single wet breath drifted upward through the floor drain. Not from the creature in the cell. From beneath us. Collins backed away first, rifle shaking badly now. What the hell is under there? Nobody answered him because we already knew, not exactly what, but enough. The creature in the cell slowly crouched low beside the drain, ears flattened against its skull, lips pulled back from its teeth. Waiting. Always waiting. That was another rule we learned too late about those things. They were patient. More patient than people. They could sit motionless for hours, listening to a forest breathe. Or a building, or prey. The scratching beneath the floor returned after sunset. Closer each time. And sometime around 8 that night, while snow buried the station windows and the mountains disappeared entirely beyond the storm, the creature inside the containment cell finally spoke its first almost word. Not clearly, not fully human, but enough that all three of us heard it. It stared directly at the drain beneath the floor and whispered one broken sound through bloodied teeth. Run. None of us moved for several seconds after it said that word. The emergency lights buzzed overhead with that weak yellow glow old buildings get during power outages. Snow hissed against the narrow basement windows near the ceiling. Somewhere, far above us, the station generator coughed unevenly against the storm. And inside that containment cell, the creature stayed crouched low beside the floor drain with every muscle tense beneath its fur. Run. Not a growl, not mimicry, a warning. Collins looked like he might faint outright. His rifle hung useless at his side while he stared through the bars. Ellis slowly crossed himself under his breath. I wish I could tell you I handled it better. Truth is, my own knees felt weak. Every instinct screamed that we were standing beside something unnatural, something that should not exist. But fear does not always make people leave. Sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes it roots you to the spot because your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are seeing. The scraping beneath the floor returned. Closer this time. You could hear claws dragging slowly through the drainage tunnel below the concrete. Wet breathing followed after it. Heavy, labored. Like something wounded was pulling itself forward inch by inch beneath us. The creature inside the cell backed away from the drain immediately and pressed itself into the far corner, its ears flattened against its skull, teeth bared. Terrified. That mattered. Whatever was beneath us scared the thing we already feared. I remember Ellis whispering, "There's more than one." Nobody answered because we all knew he was right. Another scrape echoed upward through the pipes. Then silence again. Collins suddenly snapped out of whatever shock had frozen him and hurried toward the stairwell. We need state police down here now. The roads are buried, I reminded him. Then National Guard, somebody. He kept talking while climbing the stairs 2 at a time. Fast, nervous. His voice echoed upward through the concrete corridor until the heavy station door slammed shut above us. The creature watched him leave. Then it looked directly at me. I cannot explain this part properly without sounding insane, but there was frustration in its expression. Not anger toward us, frustration toward itself. like it understood we were too slow to grasp the danger. That thing knew something was coming, and it knew we were trapped. Outside, the storm worsened after dark. Wind hammered the building so hard the old windows trembled in their frames. Power flickered twice more before stabilizing again on backup. The station radio picked up almost nothing except bursts of static and half-finished weather warnings. Around 9:30, the phone lines died completely. That was when the isolation truly settled in. No roads, no phones, no outside contact. Just 4 men trapped inside a station with something impossible below ground, while something else circled outside in the storm. Funny thing is, fear eventually becomes routine if it lasts long enough. Human beings adapt to madness disturbingly fast. By 10 o'clock, Ellis had started brewing fresh coffee upstairs while Collins barricaded the rear maintenance door with evidence lockers. We talked in practical sentences because practical things felt safer. Nobody mentioned the word monster. Nobody mentioned the almost human voice downstairs. We kept pretending normal rules still applied. Looking back now, that denial feels embarrassing. I went downstairs alone around 10:45, carrying a first aid kit and a bucket of water. I still do not fully understand why. Part of me wanted answers. Another part pitied the creature despite everything. Mostly, though, I think I was lonely enough to mistake recognition for connection. The containment corridor smelled stronger now. Wet fur mixed with blood and cold concrete. The creature remained in the far corner watching the drain while I approached. It noticed the harmonica immediately. Always the harmonica. I crouched beside the bars carefully and slid the water bucket inward with my boot. The creature glanced at it but did not move. "You understand me?" I asked quietly. No response, just those yellow eyes watching every movement. "I know you spoke." The creature shifted slightly. Chains rattled softly across the floor. Then it looked toward the drain again. I heard movement beneath us at the exact same moment. Slow breathing, closer than before. The creature released another low growl from deep in its chest, not directed at me. Warning again. I should have left right then, locked the corridor, waited upstairs with the others until daylight. That would have been the smart thing. Instead, I sat down beside the bars. Maybe grief recognizes itself across species. I do not know, but that creature looked exhausted in a way I understood deeply, like something hunted for too many years. I reached into my jacket pocket and removed the harmonica again. The creature's ears twitched instantly. "You like music?" I asked softly. Stupid question, I know that now. But the thing settled slightly against the wall when I held the harmonica up. Less tense, curious again, so I played, quietly this time. Simple notes, slow ones. Old blues melody my father taught me before cancer hollowed him out one winter when I was 23 years old. Funny how memory works. You forget birthdays, addresses, entire conversations, but grief keeps sounds preserved perfectly forever. The creature closed its eyes again while I played. Not because it was tame, not because it trusted me, because it remembered something. That realization chilled me more than violence ever could. Outside the containment corridor, the building creaked under the storm. Snowmelt dripped steadily through the old pipes overhead. Somewhere upstairs, Ellis laughed suddenly at one of Colin's nervous jokes. Small human sounds trying desperately to hold back the dark. Then the creature opened its eyes sharply. Every muscle tightened again. The harmonica notes died in my hands. I heard it too. Footsteps above us. Heavy, too heavy, not Ellis or Collins. The creature stood immediately and moved toward the bars so fast the chains snapped hard against the floorbolts. Its lips peeled back from blood-stained teeth. Another step overhead. Slow. Measured. But the station floor above us should have been empty except for Ellis and Collins near the front office. This sound came from the rear hallway leading toward evidence storage. I rose carefully and listened. 3 footsteps. Then silence. The creature stared upward, listening. A deep growl rolled from its chest again. I moved toward the stairwell quietly and stopped halfway up. The station lights flickered weakly overhead. Shadows stretched long across the booking area. "Ellis," I called. No answer. My stomach tightened immediately. I climbed faster. The front office stood empty when I reached the top. Coffee still steamed beside the radio desk. Collins' rifle leaned abandoned against the wall. The rear hallway door stood slightly open. Cold air drifted inward from the darkness beyond. I drew my revolver instantly. Ellis. Still no answer. The silence inside that station felt deliberate suddenly, not empty, watching. Then came the sound, not from downstairs, not from outside, directly behind the rear storage door. Wet breathing. I approached slowly with my revolver raised. Every instinct screamed at me to stop. The hallway lights buzzed overhead while melting snow dripped from somebody's boot prints across the floor. Except the prints were wrong. Too narrow, too long, and spaced impossibly far apart. My hand touched the storage door carefully. The breathing stopped. Complete silence. I pulled the door open fast. Nothing inside except shelves and evidence lockers. But the rear loading bay beyond stood open to the storm. Snow blew inward across the concrete floor, and beside the doorway sat Ellis's flashlight. Still on. I heard Collins shouting from outside before I saw him. Panicked. Screaming my name through the storm. I ran into the snow with the revolver raised. Collins stood near the vehicle lot, pointing toward the tree line behind the station. His face looked gray beneath the floodlights. What happened? I saw something take him. Those words hit me like ice water. What do you mean, take him? Collins struggled to breathe properly. Terror does that sometimes, makes grown men sound like children again. He heard something outside the bay door, thought maybe an animal got into the generator shed. I stayed inside, covering the hallway. Collins swallowed hard. Then I heard Ellis yell. The floodlights behind the station illuminated snow, whipping sideways through the dark. Pine trees bent under heavy wind near the drainage woods beyond the lot. "What did you see?" Collins pointed shakily toward the trees. It stood up. I remember the exact way he said that. Not stepped out, not appeared, stood up. As though whatever took Ellis had first been moving on all fours. Fresh drag marks cut through the snow toward the woods. Deep grooves beside boot tracks that suddenly vanished halfway across the lot. No blood, no body. Nothing except the storm erasing everything inch by inch. Then, somewhere beyond the trees came a howl. Close. Another answered farther away. And downstairs beneath the station the creature in containment began slamming itself violently against the bars. The sound of that creature hitting the containment bars carried all the way into the parking lot. Steel rang through the storm beneath us, while snow whipped across the floodlights in violent white sheets. Collins kept turning in circles with his rifle raised toward the woods, but the trees beyond the station had already swallowed whatever took Ellis. I should have gone after him immediately. That thought stayed with me for years afterward. Maybe I could have saved him if I had moved faster. Maybe not. Truth is harder than guilt sometimes. Ellis was probably already dead before we reached the tree line. But people like me cling to guilt because it feels useful. The howls came again from deeper in the woods, closer together now, communicating. Collins looked near collapse. His hand shook so badly the rifle barrel trembled against the storm. "We need to leave," he said. "Sheriff, we need to get out of here right now." "And go where?" "The highway station, the church, anywhere. The roads are buried." "I don't care." That was the moment panic truly entered him. Up until then, Collins had still been functioning like a deputy, nervous but controlled. After Ellis disappeared, fear took over completely. I understood it. Part of me wanted to run too, but another part kept thinking about the creature downstairs, the warning, the pacing, the fact it had tried to tell us something was coming. I looked back toward the station windows glowing dimly through the storm. "We're safer inside." Collins stared at me like I had lost my mind. "There's a damn monster inside." "No," I answered quietly. "There's one inside. The others are out here." That sentence changed something in him. I saw it happen. The realization settling fully into place. Not a lone animal. A group. A pack. The wind carried another distant howl through the valley. Lower this time. Longer. Beneath it came something worse. A faint answering sound from farther west. Another voice entirely. There were more than we could hear. We returned inside quickly and barricaded the rear loading bay with filing cabinets and evidence lockers. Snow blew under the gaps beneath the doors. The station felt colder now, despite the radiators struggling against the storm. And downstairs, the creature continued slamming itself against the bars, not trying to escape, trying to get our attention. That mattered. I grabbed the shotgun from the evidence cage and headed for the containment level again before Collins could stop me. "You cannot seriously be going back down there. We need to know why it's acting like this. What if it gets loose?" I looked toward the floor where Ellis's flashlight still lay abandoned near the booking desk. "What if it's trying to warn us again?" Collins did not follow immediately. He stayed upstairs checking windows while I descended into the basement alone. The corridor lights flickered unevenly overhead. Each impact against the containment bars echoed through the concrete walls like gunfire. The creature stood upright now, towering against the steel gate with its chains stretched taut behind it. The moment it saw me, the slamming stopped. Silence returned instantly. The creature breathed heavily through bloodied teeth while staring toward the stairwell behind me, listening. I approached slowly with the shotgun lowered. "Ellis is gone," I said. The creature blinked once, no reaction otherwise. You knew they were coming. Its gaze shifted toward the harmonica in my jacket pocket again. Always back to that. I do not know why I trusted that detail. Maybe because it felt personal, human, something beyond pure violence. But when the creature looked at that harmonica, the rage in its face softened slightly every time. I took it out carefully. The creature settled back from the bars. Outside the station, the storm groaned through the mountains. Pipes rattled overhead. Somewhere above us, Collins moved furniture against the front doors. I played quietly again, 3 notes, then 4 more. The creature lowered itself slowly onto the floor while listening. Its breathing eased slightly. One clawed hand rested against the concrete near the drain pipe. And that was when I finally noticed the scars. Not random wounds, marks. Thin white lines crossing the wrists and chest in deliberate patterns. Some old, some fresh. Cuts, not animal injuries. Something had made those marks intentionally. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. "Who did that to you?" The creature opened its eyes slowly. Then it did something I still cannot fully explain. It pointed toward me. Then toward the old sheriff's station wall surrounding us. Then toward the mountains outside. Not random movement, communication. I felt cold move through my stomach. "You've been here before." The creature stared at me without blinking. I should have known then. The stories around Black Hollow Ridge went back generations. hunters disappearing near Mercer Creek, mining crews hearing cries beneath the forest floor, livestock mutilations every few winters. My grandfather used to tell stories about something walking upright near the old logging roads during the 1930s. We all laughed about those stories growing up. Mountain folklore. Nothing more. But suddenly the station felt older than it had an hour earlier, heavy with history I had ignored my entire life. The creature lifted its head sharply toward the ceiling. I heard it too, footsteps upstairs, fast. Collins shouted my name immediately afterward. I ran toward the stairwell with the shotgun ready. Collins stood near the front office pointing toward the snow-covered parking lot outside the station windows. His face looked pale enough to disappear under the fluorescent lights. There's something out there. I moved beside him carefully. At first, I saw nothing except blowing snow under the floodlights. Then movement crossed near the impound fence. Tall, too tall. A shape moving on two legs before dropping briefly to all fours behind a county vehicle. Another shape appeared near the tree line seconds later. Then another, not attacking, watching. The station suddenly felt very small. One of the figures stepped fully into the floodlight for maybe 3 seconds before the storm swallowed it again. Gray fur, long arms, narrow waist, eyes reflecting yellow against the snow. Bigger than the one downstairs, much bigger. Collins whispered, "They're surrounding us." The creature downstairs began growling again, deep enough to vibrate through the floor. I made the decision then that changed everything afterward. "We move it upstairs." Collins looked horrified. "You've completely lost your damn mind. If they breach the building, those bars downstairs become a coffin." "So we just let it walk around the station?" "No." I swallowed hard. "We negotiate." Even now, saying that sounds insane. Negotiate. As though I believed we could reason with the impossible. But the creature had warned us twice already. It had not attacked despite countless opportunities. And whatever stood outside in the storm frightened it badly enough to communicate. Looking back, I realize loneliness influenced me more than logic ever did. The creature downstairs was wounded, trapped, isolated from its own kind. Some broken part of me recognized that instantly because I had spent years becoming the same thing. We returned downstairs together carrying fresh chains and the animal restraint pole. Collins argued the entire way. "This ends with us dead." "Maybe." "You hear yourself?" "Yes." The containment corridor smelled stronger than ever now. Wet fur and cold earth. The creature stood waiting near the bars when we approached. Not aggressive. Expectant. I unlocked the outer gate slowly while Collins covered me with the rifle. Every movement felt unreal, like sleepwalking through somebody else's nightmare. The creature watched the keys carefully again. Recognition, memory, it understood cages. That thought still haunts me. I opened the bars 6 inches. The creature did not lunge, did not move at all. Slowly, I held up the fresh chains. "We restrain you first." Its ears twitched slightly. Then something happened that nearly made Collins run outright. The creature extended both wrists forward voluntarily, like a prisoner, or somebody who had done this before. Collins whispered, "Jesus Christ." My hands shook while securing the restraints. Up close, I could see old scars circling both wrists beneath the fur. Deep ones. Repeated. The creature never resisted once. Outside, another howl rolled across the valley, much closer now. The windows upstairs rattled faintly from the force of it. The creature flinched immediately toward the sound. Fear again, not fear for itself. Urgency, that difference matters. We led it slowly from the containment cell into the corridor. Chains dragged softly across the concrete floor while the creature ducked beneath the low-ceiling pipes. Standing fully upright, nearly brushed the overhead lights. And despite every instinct telling me otherwise, I realized something horrifying halfway up those basement stairs. The creature was protecting us. Leading that creature upstairs remains the single most unnatural moment of my life. Not because it fought us, because it did not. The chains dragged softly behind it while we climbed the narrow concrete stairwell toward the booking level. Snowlight filtered weakly through the frosted station windows above, casting pale strips across its fur. Every few steps, the creature paused to listen toward the storm outside. Always listening, always calculating. Collins stayed 6 feet behind us with the rifle raised the entire time. Sweat rolled visibly down his forehead despite the cold. He looked like a man escorting a live bomb through a crowded church. And maybe he was. The creature ducked beneath the stairwell pipe and stepped onto the booking floor without resistance. Under the fluorescent lights upstairs, it appeared even larger than before. Thick shoulders, scarred chest, fur matted dark with half-dried blood. One ear torn nearly in half from some old injury, but the eyes remained the worst part. Too aware, it glanced across the room quickly, taking in the exits, the windows, the overturned chairs near the front desk. Then it stopped near the old radiator beside the evidence wall. Heat. It wanted the heat. I pointed slowly toward the corner. "Stay there." The creature looked at me for several seconds, before lowering itself beside the radiator with surprising care. Chains clinked softly against the tile floor. Steam hissed through old pipes overhead, while snow hammered the building outside. Collins stared at me in disbelief. "It listened to you." "No," I answered quietly. "It understood me." That difference mattered more than I wanted to admit. We secured one chain around the support beam near the radiator and backed away slowly. The creature watched every movement but made no attempt to escape. Its breathing sounded rough now, wet, painful. The trap wound along its ribs had reopened, climbing the stairs. Blood dripped steadily onto the tile. I remember staring at those drops longer than necessary, because focusing on ordinary things felt safer than acknowledging the impossible sitting 10 feet away. Outside the station, shapes still moved through the storm. We caught glimpses between gusts, tall figures crossing the edge of the floodlights, eyes reflecting briefly near the impound fence. Once, something slammed hard against the rear garage wall before vanishing again into the snow, testing us. The creature near the radiator reacted every single time, ears twitching, head lifting, growling low in its chest, protective. That realization unsettled me more deeply than outright aggression would have. Collins kept pacing between windows with the rifle clenched tightly in both hands. Around midnight, he finally stopped near the coffee machine and stared at the creature for a long moment. "You think it's male?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't know." "It protected us downstairs." Collins swallowed hard. "Animals don't usually do that." I looked toward the creature beside the radiator. Maybe it isn't an animal. Neither of us liked that answer. The station clock ticked loudly through the silence. Wind screamed outside the walls. Somewhere deep beneath the building, the drainage pipes groaned under frozen runoff. Then the creature suddenly lifted its head sharply toward the holding hallway, instantly alert. I heard it half a second later. Movement inside the station, not outside, inside. Slow footsteps near the evidence corridor. Collins raised the rifle immediately. "You hear that?" I nodded. The creature stood in one smooth motion beside the radiator. Chains tightened against the beam with a metallic snap. Every muscle along its back rose beneath the fur. Another footstep echoed through the hallway. Heavy, dragging slightly. Then came Ellis's voice. "Sheriff." Both of us froze. The sound hit me like electricity. "Ellis?" No answer. Just silence again. Collins lowered the rifle halfway. Oh, thank God. But something about the voice felt wrong to me instantly. Not the sound itself, the rhythm. Like somebody repeating a line they did not fully understand. The creature beside the radiator released a low growl. Not hostile toward us. Warning. Again. I moved carefully toward the hallway with the shotgun raised. "Ellis, answer me." Several seconds passed before the reply came. "Help me." The words sounded strained, wet somehow. Behind me, the creature suddenly jerked hard against the chains, violent enough to rattle the support beam. Collins flinched backward. "What's it doing?" I already knew. The creature was afraid. Not of Ellis, of whatever was using his voice. I should have listened immediately. Instead, I kept moving toward the hallway because human beings cling desperately to hope even when hope becomes dangerous. The booking corridor lights flickered weakly overhead as I approached the evidence wing. The station felt colder here away from the radiator heat. My breath fogged visibly in front of me. "Ellis." This time, the answer came from much closer. "Sheriff." I stopped walking instantly. Too close. The voice sounded directly around the corner ahead, but there had been no footsteps approaching, nothing, just sudden presence. Every instinct screamed at me to back away. Then came another sound beneath the voice. Breathing. Deep. Wet. Animal. I tightened my grip on the shotgun. "Show yourself." Silence. Then slowly, from around the corner of the evidence hallway, a hand reached into view. Human hand. Covered in blood. My stomach dropped. "Ellis." The fingers twitched once against the wall. Then the arm bent the wrong direction. Not dramatically, not like a movie monster, just slightly wrong. Enough that my brain rejected it instantly. The creature behind me exploded into snarling fury. Chains crashed against the support beam. Collins shouted something from the booking desk. And around the hallway corner, something began pulling itself slowly into view, using Ellis Mercer's body like badly fitted clothing. I fired instantly. The shotgun blast deafened the hallway. The figure vanished backward into darkness with a wet impact against the wall. For half a second, I heard claws scraping violently across tile before silence returned. Then came the howl. Inside the building. Not from outside. Close enough to shake dust from the ceiling vents. Collins screamed my name from the booking area. I ran back toward the front office just as the rear station windows exploded inward. Glass erupted across the room in a spray of snow and ice. Something massive came through the frame low and fast. Gray fur, teeth, long arms ending in black claws. Collins fired wildly. The creature near the radiator hit the end of its chains with terrifying force. The thing inside the station moved almost too fast to track properly. 1 second it crouched beside the broken window. The next it slammed Collins sideways into the booking desk hard enough to shatter wood. His rifle skidded across the floor. I fired twice with the shotgun. One blast caught the creature in the shoulder. Blood sprayed across the filing cabinets. The thing barely reacted. Yellow eyes locked onto me. Huge, male, scarred across the muzzle. Older than the one we captured. Then the chained creature beside the radiator roared. Not growled, roared. The sound physically vibrated through my chest. The larger creature turned instantly toward it. Recognition passed between them. Not simple pack behavior either. Something deeper. Emotional, complex. The wounded creature near the radiator stepped forward as far as the chains allowed and bared its teeth. Protective stance. Defensive. Between us and the attacker. I remember Collins bleeding beside the overturned desk while staring in disbelief. "It's protecting us." The larger creature snarled softly and moved closer. Snow swirled inward through the shattered window around its body. It carried the smell of deep forest and rotting meat. Then it looked directly at the chained creature and made a series of low, clicking sounds deep in its throat. Communication. The wounded creature answered immediately with shorter growls and sharp barks. Argument, maybe, warning. The larger creature glanced toward me suddenly and smiled. Not human smiling, worse, lips peeling slowly back from its teeth in deliberate recognition. Then it spoke. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. "Give back." 3 words, that was all. But hearing language come from something shaped like a nightmare broke whatever certainty remained inside me about the world. The wounded creature snarled violently toward the larger one. The attacker's expression changed instantly after that, anger replacing curiosity. And for the first time since entering the station, I realized something terrifying. The creature we captured was not afraid for itself. It was afraid of him. The larger creature moved first, fast enough that my eyes struggled to follow it. 1 second it stood near the shattered window with snow swirling around its legs. The next, it lunged across the booking floor directly toward the chained creature beside the radiator. The impact sounded like a vehicle collision. Both creatures slammed into the support beam hard enough to crack concrete around the mounting bolts. Collins crawled desperately behind the overturned desk while I pumped another shotgun shell into the chamber with shaking hands. The 2 things tore into each other with horrifying precision. Not wild animal chaos. Technique. That was the detail that stayed with me afterward. They fought with intention, targeting joints, throats, eyes. The larger creature used its weight to pin the wounded one against the wall while clawing viciously at its chest wound. The chained creature fought like something exhausted but desperate, protective, defensive, protecting us. Even now, those words sound impossible in my mouth. I fired once more when the larger creature exposed its side. The blast caught fur and flesh along the ribs. Blood sprayed across the booking counter. The thing roared instantly and turned toward me with murder in its eyes. Then the wounded creature grabbed its throat. Not claws first. Hands. 5 fingered hands wrapping around the larger creature's neck before slamming its skull through the radiator pipes beside the wall. Steam exploded outward with a deafening hiss. Scalding vapor filled the booking area instantly. The larger creature shrieked. That sound still wakes me some nights. Not wolf, not human. Something between. Collins crawled toward his dropped rifle through shattered glass while the creatures crashed across the station floor. Filing cabinets overturned. Phones ripped from walls. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead beneath the violence. And through it all, the wounded creature kept placing itself between us and the larger one. Always between. The support chain finally snapped during the second impact. Metal whipped across the floor as both creatures disappeared into the hallway beyond the booking desk. Then came Ellis's voice again. "Sheriff." Soft, almost gentle. My blood turned cold. The larger creature stepped back into view. Blood covered its muzzle. Steam rose from burns along its shoulder where the radiator had burst, and in its hand was Ellis Mercer's face. Not the head, just the skin. I wish I were exaggerating. It held it like a mask, studying me through torn flesh. Then it lifted it slightly, as if trying it on, learning, mocking. The wounded creature burst in behind it immediately, snarling. One eye swollen shut, chest soaked in blood. The larger one turned and clicked sharply. Conversation. The wounded one answered with a deep bark and stepped forward. The larger one looked almost annoyed. Not enraged, irritated, like family arguing. That was the moment I stopped thinking of them as animals. Collins grabbed his rifle and fired 3 shots. The larger creature moved too fast. It crossed the floor in seconds and slammed Collins into the holding bars. Steel bent, bones cracked. The rifle dropped. I fired the shotgun. The blast hit its spine. It staggered but didn't fall. Nothing should survive that. The wounded creature attacked immediately, driving both into the records room. Shelves collapsed. Paper flew. The station shook with their roars. Then silence. Only steam hissing. I stood there with the shotgun raised, heart hammering. From inside came a sound. Whining, not rage, pain. The wounded creature stepped out first, barely alive, blood pouring from deep wounds, one arm hanging useless. The larger one remained inside, unseen. The wounded creature looked at Collins, then ignored his fear and pressed a claw gently to his chest, stopping the bleeding. I stared in disbelief. No puncture, no harm, only understanding. That frightened me more than violence ever had. Outside, the howls continued circling. Closer. The storm had weakened. Now we heard movement everywhere. Roof, walls, windows, waiting. The larger creature was not alone, neither was ours. I moved Collins behind the desk. The wounded creature returned to the radiator corner, breathing hard. Then it pointed toward the records room. I entered carefully. The room was destroyed. The larger creature was gone. The window stood open, but 3 deer carcasses lay inside, fresh, arranged in a triangle around the mining maps. Not feeding, an offering, or a warning. The wounded creature appeared behind me and pointed at the maps. Old mining territory beneath Black Hollow Ridge. Silver, iron, forgotten tunnels. Red markings crossed abandoned shafts west of Mercer Creek. The creature tapped them, then pointed to the mountains. "You live there?" I asked. It nodded, slow, certain. Collins whispered, "No way." But it was clear. Communication. It touched its chest, then pointed outside toward the escaped male. Fear, not of death, memory, trauma. Then it made a soft sound like grief. We were looking at something wounded long before we ever captured it. Not just body, history. Around 2 a.m, the generator failed. Darkness swallowed the station, and outside, something huge began scratching slowly at the walls. Claws against brick. Patient. The wounded creature stood immediately when the power failed. Every muscle along its body tightened beneath the blood-soaked fur. It moved away from the radiator and closer to us instead. Closer. Protective again. I remember Collins staring at it from the floor with his face pale from pain. It keeps guarding us. Neither of us said the next thought out loud. Guarding us from what? The scratching stopped near the rear evidence wall, then silence. Heavy silence. The kind hunters fear in deep woods when something finally notices them. I grabbed 2 emergency lanterns. Weak orange light spread across the booking area, stretching long shadows over broken glass and overturned furniture. The creature watched the flame. Not fear, recognition. I noticed burn scars along its chest beneath the blood. Old, circular, deliberate. Something had caged it before us. Not because it was feared, because it was not understood. Outside, movement circled the station. Footsteps in snow, breathing near windows, low growls on the roof, testing, hunting. The creature paced whenever the sound shifted, tracking everything. Then 3 knocks came at the door. Slow, measured. Collins froze. I raised the shotgun and approached the glass. A human shape stood outside. Alice Mercer's jacket. Hope flickered for a second. Then it lifted its face. Wrong eyes, yellow. It smiled beneath Ellis's skin, too wide, too broken. It knocked again, 3 times. "Cold," it said. Ellis's voice, practiced, repeated, learning language. The creature behind me growled sharply. Then another figure appeared in the storm. Smaller, white fur, female. She looked at the wounded creature inside the station. Not aggression. Grief. The wounded creature stepped forward slowly. She pressed a hand to the glass. It mirrored her. Connection, recognition. The larger male shoved her violently aside. She fell into the snow. The wounded creature roared and lunged. I barely held it back as chains snapped across the floor. Outside, the dynamic shifted instantly. Not pack behavior, personal. The wounded creature was escaping him, not following him. The female rose slowly and disappeared into the storm. The male watched her go, then turned back toward us. Amused, he retreated into the darkness, and the scratching stopped. Completely. That silence felt worse than the noise. Collins was badly injured, bleeding through bandages. I moved him behind the counter. The creature stayed near the windows, always watching. At some point, exhaustion dulled the fear. It never attacked us, not once. It guarded us. I found myself speaking to it. "You got a name?" No answer. I laughed weakly. Yeah, thought so. Stormwind filled the silence. Then I showed it the harmonica. "My boy used to play this," I said, terribly. Collins gave a weak laugh, a small human moment in all that terror. I held it out. "Want to see?" Collins whispered, "Sheriff." But the creature stepped forward slowly, careful, controlled. It extended one clawed hand. Waiting. I placed the harmonica into its palm. It studied it silently, then gently brought it closer, tracing the metal with almost human care. Finally, it lifted it slightly and inhaled its scent. Memory again. I saw it clearly this time. Then something changed in its expression. Recognition. The creature looked sharply toward me afterward, then toward the mountains outside. Its breathing quickened. It touched the harmonica again, then pointed west toward Mercer Creek. I frowned. "What?" The creature made a soft whining sound deep in its throat, emotional, urgent. Then, very slowly, carefully, it raised the harmonica to its mouth and played 3 trembling notes, the exact same melody my son used to play. I dropped the lantern. Not from fear exactly, shock. The harmonica clattered against the creature's claws while the lantern rolled across the tile floor, throwing crooked shadows around the booking area. Collins stared openly now, too exhausted and injured to even hide his disbelief anymore. But I knew those notes. Every parent knows certain sounds forever. Your child's laugh, their footsteps running down a hallway, the rhythm of their breathing when they fall asleep in the back seat during long drives, and those 3 bad harmonica notes. My son always missed the second one slightly because his hands were too small when he first learned the melody. The creature missed it the same way. I remember backing away slowly from it without realizing I was moving. My heartbeat hammered so violently it blurred my vision. "How do you know that?" The creature lowered the harmonica carefully. Its eyes stayed fixed on me. Not aggressive, almost sad. Then it pointed west again toward Mercer Creek. A memory surfaced instantly, sudden and sharp enough to physically hurt. 8 years before the station incident, during my son's final summer alive, we camped near Mercer Creek together. Just one weekend. He was weak from treatment but begged to see the mountains again before autumn started. I had forgotten that trip completely until that moment. Or maybe I buried it. Funny how grief works. The mind locks certain doors because opening them hurts too much. We stayed beside the creek under old pine trees west of the abandoned mining tunnels. My son played that harmonica constantly during the trip because he thought the echoes through the valley sounded beautiful. And one night we heard noises beyond the trees. Something moving around camp. Heavy footsteps. I remember checking the woods with my rifle while my son laughed from the tent and kept playing the harmonica terribly into the darkness. At the time, I thought it was a bear circling camp. Now my blood turned cold realizing something else may have been listening from those woods all along. The creature watched recognition settle across my face. Then it nodded once. Slowly. My knees nearly gave out. "You were there." The creature lowered its gaze briefly. Not denial, confirmation. Collins whispered from behind the desk, "Sheriff, what the hell is happening?" I could barely answer him because my mind kept replaying fragments from that camping trip. Small details I ignored back then. Strange whistles from the tree line at night. Fresh fish left near camp without explanation. My son waking once before dawn, claiming somebody was watching the stars with him outside the tent. I dismissed all of it at the time. Parents do that when children are dying. You focus on medications. Doctors, time slipping away. You stop noticing strange things around the edges of life. The creature handed the harmonica back to me carefully. Gentle again. Then it moved suddenly toward the shattered front windows. Alert. I heard it immediately afterward. Vehicle engine, far off through the storm. Collins struggled upright instantly. Someone made it through. Headlights appeared faintly beyond the snow moments later, bouncing through the trees near the station road. Relief surged through me so hard it almost hurt, until the creature began growling. Not warning. Fear. The vehicle emerged slowly into view beneath the floodlights. County snowplow truck. Front blade raised halfway. Driver's side door hanging open. No driver visible. The truck rolled silently into the parking lot before stopping crooked near the impound fence. Engine still running. Nobody got out. The wounded creature backed away from the windows immediately. Every muscle tight again. Then movement appeared behind the truck. The larger male. He stepped into the floodlight slowly beside the plow, with snow covering his shoulders. One massive claw rested casually against the hood, while yellow eyes fixed on the station. And behind him came more shapes from the storm. 3. No. 4. Different sizes. Different fur colors. Watching. The white female remained farthest back near the tree line. The larger male looked toward the wounded creature through the broken windows. Then he spoke again. "Come." The voice sounded clearer this time. Still broken. Still wrong, but improving. Learning rapidly. The wounded creature did not move. The larger male tilted his head slightly afterward. Then his eyes shifted toward Collins bleeding behind the front desk. And he smiled again. That expression still makes me sick. Not because it looked monstrous, because it looked human enough to understand cruelty. The creature beside me released a deep rumbling growl and stepped protectively between us and the window once more. The larger male watched that carefully. Then he spoke another sentence. "Not yours." The wounded creature roared immediately afterward, furious, emotional. The others outside shifted uneasily at the sound, especially the white female. She lowered her head almost submissively. The larger male ignored them. His attention remained fixed entirely on the wounded creature inside the station. I finally understood then. This was not a hunt. It was retrieval. Something had escaped him, and he intended to take it back. The storm weakened further near dawn. Wind slowed. Snow fell straighter now beneath the floodlights. Visibility improved enough that I could finally study the others outside clearly. None of them behaved the same way. One paced constantly on all fours near the fence line. Another remained nearly motionless beneath a pine tree for over 20 minutes at a time. The white female kept glancing repeatedly toward the wounded creature with obvious distress. Social structure, personality, hierarchy. God help me, but they looked like a family. The larger male eventually stepped closer toward the station porch again. Not rushing, confident. The wounded creature snarled immediately. The male answered with a sharp barking sound toward the others outside. Two of them began circling slowly toward the rear of the station afterward, flanking us. Strategic movement. I checked ammunition while Collins struggled to stay conscious behind the desk. "We won't survive another attack," he admitted quietly. He was right. I only had 7 shotgun shells left and a nearly empty revolver. Collins could barely lift the rifle anymore. The station walls already looked shredded from claw marks and shattered windows. And despite all that, the wounded creature still had opportunities to kill us if it wanted. Instead, it guarded the hallway leading toward Collins, always between us and danger. I looked toward it carefully. "You could leave." The creature met my eyes, then glanced briefly toward the larger male outside. Fear, not because chains restrained it anymore, because leaving meant going back. That realization settled heavily into my chest. The thing inside our station was not merely hunted, it was abused. The scars, the submission to restraints, the fear of the male outside. The way the white female reacted when shoved aside. Patterns emerged suddenly in horrible clarity, not a pack, a tyrant. The wounded creature moved toward me slowly afterward, careful not to appear threatening. It pointed once more toward the mining tunnels marked on the survey map lying near the records room, then toward the white female outside, then toward itself. I frowned. "You want to go there?" The creature nodded, then pointed toward the larger male, and mimed closing something. Trapping. Understanding hit me instantly. "The tunnels." The creature nodded again urgently. "He can't get through them?" Another nod. I remembered those old mining shafts well enough. Most collapsed decades earlier. Narrow passages, tight rock cuts. Dangerous, even for humans. Too small for something built like the larger male. The wounded creature suddenly grabbed my sleeve gently. Not claws, fingers. Then it spoke again, clearer this time. "Help." That single word nearly broke me. Not because it sounded human, because of the emotion behind it. Fear, exhaustion, hope. Things no predator should possess so visibly. Outside, the larger male suddenly roared loud enough to shake the station windows. The others immediately scattered wider through the snow around the building, preparing. The wounded creature looked toward me desperately, and in that moment, standing inside a freezing, ruined sheriff's station while monsters circled us through the snow, I made the worst and most human decision of my life. I decided to trust it. I should have ended it right there in that station. That thought has followed me every single day since, because the moment I nodded to that creature, everything stopped being about survival and started becoming something far more dangerous. Choice, alignment, sides. The wounded creature understood my decision instantly. It lowered its head once, slowly. Not gratitude or relief, but acknowledgement between two beings who already knew neither would survive what came next. Outside, the larger male stepped closer again. Snow clung to his shoulders in thick layers, melting into skin that looked almost human, but still deeply wrong. Floodlights carved harsh shadows across his face as he studied the broken windows. Then he spoke again. "Give it back." There was no uncertainty this time. Collins had collapsed behind the counter, one hand pressed to his ribs, breathing in short, uneven bursts. "We are not handing anything over," I said quietly. The male tilted his head and smiled again. That same slow, confident recognition that something already belonged to him. The wounded creature pressed lightly against my leg. Not fear, reassurance. Then it turned toward the hallway and pointed again at the mining maps. Urgency. Outside, the others spread out around the station in coordinated positions. Not random movement. They were cutting us off. The station was already surrounded. The wounded creature pulled my sleeve and moved toward the basement stairwell. Collins whispered, "Sheriff, don't do this." "If we stay, we die anyway," I said. "That thing is still one of them." I looked at the creature. It did not react. It only waited. That silence made the decision for me. We went down. The basement was colder than before. Flickering lights cast fractured shadows along concrete walls. The wounded creature moved fast, despite its injuries, leading us to a rusted maintenance hatch I had not opened in years. It led into old drainage tunnels connected to abandoned mines. The creature placed its hand on the hatch and looked at me, waiting. Collins rasped, "If you open that, you don't come back." Then something slammed the station above us. Dust fell from the ceiling. We had no time left. I opened it. Cold air rose from below like breath from something buried alive. We descended into the tunnel. It stretched farther than memory. Damp stone and collapsing supports vanishing into darkness. The wounded creature moved ahead, constantly listening, tracking something above us, not escaping, hunting. Then it stopped near an old support beam and touched the wall. It knew this place. It pointed deeper, then made a gesture of collapse. It wanted to bring the tunnels down. Collins whispered, "You can't collapse a mountain from inside it." The creature ignored him and pressed its hand gently to my chest. "Move." We followed. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber with rusted tracks and dripping stone. The creature stopped and pointed upward. Something was above us. Then came the impacts. Heavy. Directly overhead, the larger male. Dust rained down. Stone cracked. The entire chamber began to fail. We ran. Behind us, the mine started collapsing as something tore through its supports. Collins fell. I dragged him forward. Then light appeared ahead. Natural light. We burst into a valley basin beneath the mountain just as the tunnel collapsed behind us. Silence followed. Snow drifted gently through the broken rock opening. Then the larger male appeared on the ridge above, watching, uncertain for the first time. The wounded creature stepped forward into the snow. No chains, no walls, just choice. It faced him directly. The male growled. The creature answered with something final, then it pointed back toward the collapsed tunnel. The trap was complete. And I finally understood. We had not escaped the creature. We had escaped with the one willing to destroy its own world to end something far worse. Not of possession, of control. What followed was not a fight in the way humans understand fights. It was correction. The male moved first, fast enough that snow exploded outward from under his feet. The wounded creature met him mid-motion, both colliding in a violent impact that threw me backward into the snow. Collins groaned weakly behind me but did not move. I raised the shotgun instinctively but hesitated. There was no clear target anymore, only movement, only force. They fought across the valley floor in brutal silence, broken only by impact, sounds, and breath. No roaring now, no display, just efficiency. Every strike aimed at ending the other as quickly as possible. The white female stood frozen at the edge of the basin, watching. The others remained still along the ridge, as if waiting for outcome. The wounded creature was already injured beyond reason. Every movement cost it something. Blood marked its path through the snow. The male was not injured in the same way. He was deliberate, controlled, stronger. And slowly, inevitably, the wounded creature began to lose ground. It stumbled once near the broken timberline from the collapsed mine entrance. The male struck immediately, knocking it into the snow hard enough to leave a crater. I remember shouting without thinking. Not a command, not words that made sense, just sound. The creature turned its head briefly toward me. That moment of distraction was enough. The male slammed into it again, driving it into the snow and pinning it there with one massive hand across its chest. Snow soaked instantly into its fur. It struggled once, then stopped resisting. Not unconscious. Aware. The male leaned closer, and for the first time, I saw something like certainty in his expression, as if the outcome had always been this. The white female suddenly moved forward from the ridge. She made a sound I had not heard before from any of them, sharp, breaking. The male paused for a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. The wounded creature lifted the harmonica with its remaining strength and pressed it directly against the male's chest. The sound it produced when it blew into it was not music. It was distorted breath through broken metal. But it carried. Something in it carried. The male froze. Completely. For the first time in the entire encounter. Stillness. The white female stopped as well. The ridge creatures shifted uneasily, and in that silence, something changed in the male's expression. Recognition. Not of the object, of what it represented. Memory. Pain. He released his grip slightly, just slightly. The wounded creature did not attack. It simply held the harmonica against him. Snow fell between them. The valley itself felt suspended. Then the male spoke again. Not a command this time. Something quieter, almost uncertain. The wounded creature answered softly. No aggression, no resistance, just sound. Then it did something I will never forget. It pushed the harmonica into the male's hand, not as surrender, as return. The male stared at it for several seconds, then slowly lifted his gaze toward the wounded creature. And for the first time, I saw something that looked almost human in him. Not kindness, not forgiveness, recognition of loss. The white female stepped forward again, cautiously. The ridge group remained silent. The wounded creature lay still in the snow now, exhausted beyond movement. And I realized the truth too late. It had not been trying to win. It had been trying to end the cycle without destroying it completely. The male looked once more at the harmonica, then at me, then at the wounded creature. And finally he stepped back. Not retreat, decision. He turned away from the valley slowly and began walking back toward the collapsed mountain tunnel. The others followed after a few seconds of hesitation, even the white female. One by one, they disappeared into the fractured stone and snow, leaving silence behind them. Only the wind remained. I stayed in the snow for a long time without moving. Collins eventually stopped breathing beside me sometime before dawn. I do not know exactly when. The wounded creature did not die immediately. It lay there for a long time after the others left, watching the tunnel where they disappeared. Then it turned its head toward me one last time. I knelt beside it. The harmonica rested against its chest. It made a small sound I almost missed, not words this time, just breath. Then it closed its eyes, and did not open them again. The valley stayed silent long after. When morning finally came, the snow had already begun covering everything again. The harmonica remained in my hand when I left. I never returned to Black Hollow Ridge after that day, not because I was afraid, because I finally understood something I had spent my entire life refusing to accept. Some things are not meant to be discovered, only witnessed. And the more you try to name them, the more they remember you.